We're ready, right? We're okay. Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness about our past, we begin our village board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people. Please check out our agendas and our minutes and join us in finding new ways to support Indigenous communities. We have some links on our list, and it's been growing. We would like to keep it growing.
Okay, changes to the agenda. So within the consent agenda, I need to add 4D as in David, approved DPW request regarding the trickling filters. And then I 1 and 2 as part of 4D, also a change order in 4E regarding the Walkill Valley Rail Trail Connection Project. Autumn, can you just include a note in there referencing that HR Hudson River Valley Greenway is reimbursing us for everything regarding that project? Just want that in that agenda, so we'll pay for it, but then get reimbursed as part of the project that we've been working on with them for some time now. And also 4F, that's an expense related to the consent order, so we comply with the DEC. And within the business agenda, we have item number 3, discussion on short-term rentals. Bill, you want that on here? Okay, we'll circle back with that. And add number 9, revocable license agreement between the Village of New Paltz and Legacy Dispensary. Add number 10, park use application for Hudson Valley Pride March and Festival. Add number 12, the public access invoice for Jan 24. And add item 13, a resolution for the New York State Pro Housing Community Program. And add item 17, regarding litigation involving OCS Industries and related claims by New York State. So we're going to do item number 17 after we come out of executive session. I'm going to ask that we go into executive session before item number 17. I move that we accept the consent and business agendas as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll start with an announcement from our county legislator. Legislator Lamina Grace Harmon, are you online? Up there's Legislator Lim. We're excited to hear your update. Let us know what's going on up at Ulster County Legislator.
Sure. Are you ready for me now?
Yes.
Look at that. That's some perfect timing. So I just got back from the New York State Association of Counties this morning. So I was just, while I was getting on, pulling up my notes so I could tell you a few highlights from that, beyond just the fun stuff of meeting Tish James and, you know, those sorts of things. Okay. So learned a lot about pro-housing communities, which I think could be really helpful to us. And I'd like to do a little bit of research on what is happening in Syracuse in particular, because the Syracuse Land Bank has some pretty interesting and thorough work that they are doing around issues of housing. It's different because they're in an economically depressed state, and Ulster is, of course, in an inflated state. So not totally the same, but I do think that there's some possibilities of finding interesting overlaps there. You're not helping. Sorry. That really, the council meeting is the biggest thing going on. We learned about some interesting things with mental health. I'm sorry, I'm not totally back yet. Some interesting things with mental health, and we're working at the legislature on getting Narcan on all of the county buses, which I'm pretty excited about. That's one of the Kingston legislators who's really spearheading that, and also doing some research on those ways in which we can use the EO203s and be a conduit for creating some best practices for equity in schools. And I think that's really all I have at the moment. Are there things you'd like me to take back?
We're excited to finally go into contract with Ulster County regarding the ARPA funds for the park project. So we have an update related to our plan for those monies on this agenda.
Yep.
I believe it's expected to be on an agenda in the middle of March. So, and then another question I have is, this idea has been kicking around for a little bit. I believe there may be some remaining ARPA money that there were thoughts about using it for municipal projects regarding renewable energy. I mean, without getting ahead of ourselves, if that opportunity existed, I would love to apply on behalf of our community and have some of those monies go towards a solar array on our fire station building.
Okay.
Because I think that was the idea, is that, you know, some of those monies could be used for municipal renewable projects. So if you can find out whether that might happen,
You
we
bet.
would love to learn more.
I have a quick question, because I know the Extended Producer Responsibility Act resolution was like postponed. And I was wondering if that's something that you all would need like support from us to move forward and vote on, or anything like that. Because
Alex,
know
a letter can't hurt,
okay.
right?
So is that different from the state's plan, the proposed legislature from the state?
I believe it, well, what my take was, is it a resolution of the county ledge, like in support of the state legislature passing it? Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
I could also share that NICOM is a supporter of that legislation. So I'm
Okay.
part of the environmental and energy committee, and we officially signed on as a supporter.
oh yeah, so if you wanted to, you know, let them know that our mayor's already signed on by NICOM, and
Yep.
you know, if it needs extra nudging, we can, you know, do a resolution. I know the network students have been texting me about it, so maybe that's something we could queue up for next meeting.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. My brain is like a sieve. You said something and then I had a thought and now it's gone. It'll hold. It'll hold. Do we have any unfilled civil service positions? Because I went to a training that left me a little bit baffled. And if we do, we're running out of window to fill them without waiting for exams. So just a thing to bear in mind.
Right. Yeah, I know there's all sorts of proposed legislation to improve the civil service process. I maybe I saw a similar presentation that you witnessed at your county meeting when I was at the NICOM conference recently. So it seems like there were some ideas in terms of how to create a workaround to improve local governments and counties' ability to make those appointments.
Yeah, if Tim, what I got from it was that much like the ARPA money, right? There's a last little bit of time during which you can hire people without the exam,
Okay.
and fast track them to qualification, just it's more like an interview process. Yes, they're qualified. Yes, they check all the boxes. No, there was no competitive exam, but that time frame is running out. So,
Oh, I didn't.
yeah.
Yeah, my understanding is it kind of felt like appointing someone provisionally and then when an exam, so ordinarily that's how it would work, is you could appoint someone provisionally and then when an exam becomes available, then they can take the exam. But it seemed like this was an alternative to that route, but I didn't know that there was something that was expiring.
Yeah, yeah, and the goal does seem to be to improve the civil service exam process, to create a rolling process. All of that is not yet done, however. So there's going to be a gap between improvements in the civil service exam process and the ease of hiring exemption that's been made for COVID. So if there are vacancies, now would be the time to fill them.
I see.
Before there's a new logjam.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. Do we have any questions from our village board?
I just have a thank you to add. So like it was really great the beginning of your last meeting. Our own community member, Kate Himes, our county poet laureate, sharing poetic stories of, Ulster County residents. And like one of her poems was about Jacob Wincoop's mother. And I just like love that and just wanted to say thank you for, being part of this body that like creates that space for that moment, because it was beautiful. So I've been sharing the recording around.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Yeah. And
Yeah.
non ledge circles, we're really the church is working with Kate and the Margaret Wade Lewis Center to really uncover all of this history. So look for more and more of this history coming up in the months ahead. And one last thing, I just wanted to offer some clarification since it's come up in the last couple, well, in December and then this past month at the county ledge level. I want to offer some clarification, and if there's anything you'd like me to take back about body cameras and where that contract comes from. So at this time, Axon is the only place that we have found that we are able to get those body cameras from. And after much thought, I voted to go ahead and move forward with that contract because we don't have any other place to get the technology that we need, and our first responsibility is to the residents of Ulster County. That being said, I think that the legislature by and large is committed to making a switch at the first opportunity that that's something that's available, but it doesn't exist now. So I just wanted to clarify certainly my position on that and how I think that that vote got passed, because I know that that's been really painful and contentious for people.
I believe Axon's the same company that the town of New Paltz Police Department was considering. My understanding, there's only two options as far as body cameras, and their product is considered a superior offering.
Correct. Correct. So it is far from ideal. It is just the only available option at this time.
What makes it far from ideal?
Axon, makes money through war profiteering. And that's not a thing that I think we ethically want to be putting our financial resources behind. But again, our first response, go ahead.
Because it's a BlackRock portfolio company?
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
BlackRock, probably one of the largest investment managers in the world.
Correct.
Also very deeply involved in war thing, and
I
that's why
bet
it's a
your
problem.
retirement money is invested in BlackRock.
Well, we gotta have another resolution then about divesting our retirement funds yet again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what was the issue of the other brand? It was something like disturbing, some sort of glitch that happens too, just if we can get that out there, because I know a lot of New Paltz people were upset about this.
Yep. Yeah, and I cannot remember precisely what didn't work, but
Something that didn't work.
yeah, it does not work. It's not as effective. And I can't it might be that it's something about when you can or cannot turn them off, as I recall.
Yeah, that was something when I learned that detail, it made me realize that there was really only one choice at present, unfortunately. But yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. Actually, I think a lot of our village people will appreciate that, that you're thinking about it. We all are, and it's definitely going to be another opportunity, just like in the anti-fracking movement, how we really looked at all the portfolios that all these, government holdings are related to, and how can we divest from the things that we're working every single day against, right? So we'll have to figure that out.
Absolutely. Other things for me to take back?
Anything else?
That's it for now. Thanks for coming.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to go and unpack and hug my family.
Welcome home.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night. Any other announcements from our village board?
I have a few. Just wanted to share that, as usual, you can reach out to Elmville Regional's Project Rescue Program for Narcan and other harm reduction services and supplies anywhere you are in this county by texting ERH Rescue to 21000. And they can, help you get Narcan, other harm reduction supplies like test kits, snort kits, and sex kits. So just save that contact. Never Use Alone hotline is 1-800-484-3731. They'll stay on the line. The volunteers at Never Use Alone will stay on the line with somebody to ensure they don't experience a fatal overdose. And then here in New Paltz, we have Narcan trainings available online always. If you go to opioidpreventionnp.org, there's a video. You walk through the video, and then at the bottom of that page, you'll fill out a form, and they'll link you up with, getting the actual Narcan in your hand. And of course, our free food fridge is always available for everybody right outside Village Hall here at 25 Paddock Hill Avenue, and is always in need. It's like every time I walk by, someone says they put something in there an hour prior, which is amazing, thank you. And then, an hour goes by and somebody, who needed it has gobbled it up already. So if you can donate, please do. Just check out millionsofbutterflies.org/free-food-fridge. or the Free Food Fridge Facebook group for some help with guidelines. Basically, you just have to label ingredients. And that's it for now.
Okay. Anything else from the village board?
Just a very brief mention that the 15th annual local ingredient chili challenge is taking place on March 16th. So mark that on your calendar. Apparently they've got maybe 14 or 15 entries so far, and the top number of entries they can take is 20. And of course it benefits family New Paltz. So starts at 12 till 3. The snow rain dates the following day, the 17th, St. Patrick's Day.
Thanks. I made a comment earlier about the New York State Pension Fund being invested in BlackRock. You know, quick Google search, billions of dollars of New York State Pension Fund money is invested in both equities and fixed income via BlackRock. So I have money invested on my behalf by the New York State Pension Fund. BlackRock manages my money, and probably most people you know's money. So do we have any other public comments? Nope. Okay. We have a public hearing that's open. It's related to the amendment to the Affordable Housing Board law. So Terry and Adele, you guys want to come to the table and chat with us? We have this on the business agenda, but we can do it now. Or was I thinking that we were going to hear from Ben first if he's?
Yeah.
Oh, he's here.
So,
Were you guys okay? We kind of assumed that you might actually be interested in hearing Ben's conversation about the rate case first. The Central Hudson rate increase. So Ben is the
our Assembly member's chief of staff,
Yeah.
who, you know, Assembly member Shrestha is also an intervener on the rate case, just like Village of New Paltz was, Communities for Local Power, Public Utility Law Project, a bunch of other municipalities and stuff. And I gotta say, it's been like, as our board's point person for this, it's been a lot to follow. So I'm really, really grateful you're taking the time after hours to join us, Ben, and kind of walk us through like what is going on with Central Hudson right now.
Yeah, happy to be here. Good evening. Can folks hear me?
Yeah.
we can hear you well.
Awesome. Yeah. So, like Alex was saying, I'm Sarah Shrestha's chief of staff in the Assembly. Excited to give a short presentation about what the rate case is, what's happened, what's coming up, how we can all plug in, because we do need to be putting pressure on the Public Service Commission to try to deny this rate increase. So, yeah, Village of New Paltz, our office, like Alex was saying, we're parties to the rate case. That means that we can take certain actions in the proceedings that have more weight than public comment, but public comment is open, and you can I can share a link later for where you can go to submit public comment. Anyone's able to submit public comment, and it's open until the end of the case, and it's always good to show the public is watching and angry. So what is Central Hudson proposing? Basically, this rate case, generally they happen about every 3 years or so, and it's when the company asks the state regulator, the Public Service Commission, to raise the delivery charge based on their costs and investments that they've made. So lots of people reach out to our office in outrage about these delivery charges. How can they charge so much for deliveries? Is anyone paying attention? And the answer is yes. These rate cases are when the state regulator pays attention and approves these ludicrous delivery charges. In this rate case, Central Hudson is asking for $30 a month on our electric bills on average, more, and $30 a month on average for our gas bills. So it's a lot of money to increase our bills by on average. Obviously, if you use more electricity or gas than your average person, it would be higher, and it could also be lower. It's important to note too that there's a separate proceeding at the Public Service Commission around the ongoing billing fiasco, and these cases are not technically connected, which is very frustrating because our office, many of the interveners in the rate case have argued that Central Hudson shouldn't be allowed to increase its rates when there's this ongoing investigation into the billing fiasco. It's lots of people are still having messed up bills. They haven't closed that proceeding. And so how is the PSC going to award them any new money when that's still going on? We made that argument. It was, along with the Public Utility Law Project, many other parties to the case, it was shot down, unfortunately. But it still feels deeply true. And yeah, in general, like the arguments we've been making are a lot around how they've done such a bad job providing reliable service that they should be denied a rate increase at this point. And if anything, there should be a decrease. So that's like generally what the rate case is, like what they've been proposing, what the framework is that we're operating under, and what's happened so far. So it's been going on for a bit of time. They made their initial filing on July 31st, 2023. Since then, our office, for example, hosted 7 in-person town halls. There was a great one at SUNY New Paltz about the rate case, letting people know how to get involved. Then there were 4 in-person public hearings that the Public Service Commission and the Department of Public Service held, where, there were packed everyday folks just talking about how they couldn't pay their bills, how there were still billing errors. And then in November, parties submitted testimonies responding to the company. Then there were rebuttal testimonies. And usually what happens at that point in a rate case is that there are settlement negotiations. But because of how much pressure the Village of New Paltz and all the other interveners had been making, the Public Service Commission basically said, we're not going to go into settlement negotiations. Instead, we're going to go on this litigation track, which was something that we were pushing for along with other parties. And the reason for that is that we think they're gonna get less money. Central Hudson get less money through litigation track, and it's a clear signal that this isn't just business as usual. Although there are parts of the rate case that do feel like business as usual. It's a very interesting proceeding to be a part of for the first time, I'll just say personally. So now we're on litigation track. And then in January, at the end of January, there was a 3-week evidentiary hearing where all the parties were able to cross-examine each other. So that's what's happened so far. What's coming up? There's a couple things. The first is that on March 1st, parties are going to submit briefs and those briefs really need to make arguments that are based on what was learned in the evidentiary hearing. And then there are going to be rebuttal, and so that's March 1st, and then rebuttal briefs are due on March 11th. And the Village of New Paltz does not need to submit a brief if you don't want to, if you don't feel like you have arguments to make based off of what happened in the evidentiary hearings. I'll say personally, we're still evaluating our options, but may not submit a brief just because there's a lot going on with the state budget, and it is a very legalistic process that parties are differentially involved in. Some are involved in every single little bit, and some are a little less involved. So after the briefs are submitted, the Department of Public Services, the administrative law judges are going to take some time to draft a recommended decision. We hope it's a good one. We hope they're denying the rate increase. We hope they're saying, actually, rates should go down. You've really messed up. But that's not necessarily what's going to happen. And there's going to be a period of public comment. We're going to be pushing for lots of in-person hearings. We hope everyone who's watching this video, everyone who's in the room, everyone on Zoom comes out to those public hearings, lets the Public Service Commission know that there shouldn't be a rate increase. And also as a party, the Village of New Paltz can push for in-person hearings too, right? Like that's one of our things as parties that we can do, is that we get to like shape the procedure a little bit more. And so we can say, hey, we shouldn't just have Zoom hearings. We need to have in-person hearings. We need to have lots of in-person hearings. We need the in-person hearings to be bilingual. We need the in-person hearings to be at times that people who have 9-to-5 jobs can come, right? We need them to be in geographically diverse areas. There's a lot of things that if we don't demand that the Public Service Commission does, that then they may not. And they may just default to doing Zoom hearings, which are a lot less impactful, just from being at the in-person ones and listening to some of the remote ones. You can really talk directly to the people who have to decide that Central Hudson, who are trying to decide that Central Hudson is going to increase their rates. And so, that's a nice thing about the in-person hearings, is that you can have that more person-to-person connection. And so that's the main time for the public to weigh in at this point. I mentioned before that you can always submit a comment online. I'm realizing I don't have a way to share a link, but I can maybe send it to someone, to the board, to the village board, and you can make it accessible, hopefully in some way. But it's on the Public Service Commission's website. Yeah, and then so what's going to happen after they take this public comment is that the administrative law judges are likely going to either decide the Public Service Commission is going to vote on the recommended decision from the administrative law judges. That's likely either going to be May 16th or June 20th at their sort of monthly meeting. And then the new rates are scheduled to go into effect July 1st, 2024. As I mentioned before, we're on this litigation track. And the benefit of that is that it's likely to reduce the rate hike more than the settlement track. But unfortunately, it does mean that instead of so usually when settlement happens, it's a 3-year deal where like year 1, they go up a little bit, year 2, they go up a little bit, year 3, they go up a little bit. But with the litigation track is always just a 1-year thing. And so that means that Central Hudson is likely to submit another request for a rate increase in July of 2024. So that is something we should just be aware of, is that as this rate case ends, a new one is likely to begin, although hopefully they are so ashamed that they don't. But it does seem possible. Yeah, and happy to take questions or thoughts. We've just introduced a bunch of legislation around all the things we've been learning in the rate case and how frustrated we've been in the rate case. We have a bunch of other sort of utility justice legislation too that we've introduced. I could blabber on about, I could talk about that, but also I'm happy just to stop there for now because I've been talking for a bit.
Just one quick question. Well, first, one comment. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for, pointing out again, like the power of all the different interveners in this case. How like it really has put pressure on it to go the litigation track. Like Lori Wheelock's like sense of that really made me kind of understand how powerful that's been in terms of like these kinds of cases throughout history. So thanks for touching on that. When it comes time for maybe interveners to demand or request or urge the next set of public hearings to be in person, like maybe like the assembly member's office and the village of New Paltz could kind of go in on a comment saying, let's do something in person on campus. Like that, I don't know, I think that would be good. Or, repeat the same comment or something like that. But yeah, when that comes time, I definitely want to make sure we weigh in so that we can have something right here that people can walk to.
Yeah, sounds great to coordinate on that. Great question. We don't have a specific date yet because it'll be after there's a recommended decision. I think my sense is that it will be maybe April. I don't know. I'm a first time rate case party, and so I don't. And I think the other thing that's interesting is that because it's litigation track, even like the Public Utility Law Project, like Pulp, is party to many, many rate cases, but they haven't done a litigation track case in a long time. So the timeline is also a little bit funky. We're just sort of learning more about what litigation track looks like as we do it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That just made me feel a lot better because I'm like reading the emails every day and I'm like, okay, I can't find like when the deadline is, but we're ready to make that comment when it's time. Definitely if you send us that link, the correct one for the current ongoing public comment, we can get that on the website and social media, and I like keep sharing that out as individuals too. And that's it for me for now. Did any of you have questions about just this chunk?
I have questions, Ben. So during deliberations, has there been any discussion about utilities that are similar to Central Hudson but don't have parent companies that are publicly listed investment funds? So Fortis is listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange in Toronto. It's listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And I've looked at this in the past, and I find it to be really quite amazing that they boast how their appealing to investors because they have a defensive moat. And what that means is that, you know, they have a monopoly that is very hard for the regulators to address. And they can use their influence to protect their cash flows. So has there been any discussion at all about other utilities in the United States that are not owned by for-profit companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're certainly very interested in the possibilities of Central Hudson not being owned by a for-profit company, being owned, being owned by all of us, by us having a public power entity that was democratically deciding the future of our grid and energy system. It's definitely something we're thinking a lot about. In terms of the rate case, it's a very constrained procedure about sort of what topics are sort of part of the case and allowed to be discussed. And there's some discussion certainly about sort of Central Hudson's financial health, which is not great, and how much money is being sent from Central Hudson to Fortis and how much money is being sent from Fortis to Central Hudson. There's some discussion of that. I think the rate case is really designed where it starts with Central Hudson saying we need to spend so much money to invest in all this infrastructure over the next year. And if we spend all this money, rates are going to increase by this much. Because the way the rates are designed is Central Hudson, the amount that they're allowed to charge is based off of their approved investments and expenses. And so the rate case starts with them saying, we need to spend so much money. Please, Department of Public Service, can you approve this money? And then we're going back and forth on what sorts of investments are actually necessary. What sort of expenses do they need? So there's not a lot that's actually in the procedure of the rate case about comparing to other utilities or sort of who's doing innovative things to save ratepayers money in other places. If only it's such a important consideration, right? What does it look like if we're not owned by a multinational corporation that's trying to maximize profits? These are such critical questions that I wish were at the heart of the rate case, but it's really about, hey, we want to spend all this money so we can jack up rates. Can you approve it? And then we're arguing back and forth about whether or not that's reasonable or necessary.
Right. So
I don't know if that doesn't totally answer, but
yeah. So another question that I have relates to, because it's interesting that you say that we don't own or we don't have a stake in Central Hudson, but kind of the point that I was raising earlier about the common exposure to BlackRock, we also have a very common exposure to Central Hudson, and that I've looked in the past, and the state pension fund does not have direct holdings in Fortis, but the state pension fund has enormous holdings in Canadian banks, particularly the Bank of Montreal. I believe the Bank of Montreal is one of the largest holders of Fortis. So, what's challenging about a lot of this conversation is that many individuals who have direct exposure and benefit when the state pension fund does well actually are protected and have an interest in the profitability of Fortis. So there's lots of, I think, challenging curiosities that I think are somewhat alarming. And I really feel like there's an opportunity to have a discussion and encourage the state pension fund to look more closely at, are we harming our local ratepayers because we are invested in portfolio companies that do better when Fortis does better by being harmful and creating problems for our constituents.
yeah. I think that's sort of positive engagement around corporate social responsibility and sort of environmental, social, and governance factors, trying to run those sorts of corporate campaigns, right? I love that idea. I've spent time doing it in previous lines of work. Yeah, I think, trying to get people to think more holistically about the types of investments we're making as state institutions, it needs to be part of the conversation, I think.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to address some of it. I mean, those increases, like, the average increase of $30. And when I've looked at it, I think that's actually a lowball estimate. That's for someone who's not using that many kilowatt hours.
For like a studio. Yeah.
These increases are significantly more than even those averages that are included in some of these materials. I think it's actually a very troubling possibility in terms of what people are going to end up seeing as far as increases to their electric bills.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone would like to think of themselves as an average consumer, but half of us at least are using more than average. So I definitely, it's definitely deceiving, right? I think that's sort of the numbers that we've sort of gotten locked on. It's because it's what gets discussed, but it's hard to talk about it more generally. But yeah, no, I do think some people will see if those rate increases get approved, some people will see much larger increases in their bills.
Ben, I have a quick question. With our interest in, electricity, as we've been doing for a number of years here, what portion of this examination involves expansion and hardening of the grid? Is this $30 or whatever the average is, all being pointed to, being able to serve the needs of our growing electric appetite and whatnot?
Yes, it's a good question. So it's about $30 a month for electric bills on average and $30 a month on average for gas. So, the investments and expenses related to electric are part of the gas or part of the electric infrastructure and vice versa for gas. How far ahead is Central Hudson thinking about the growing grid, the growing demand for electricity? I certainly think they need to be thinking harder about the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, how we're going to meet our goals, right? They submit a 1-year rate case that makes it hard to think about the goals we have for 2040 and for 2050, right? And so, yeah, this is something that I'm really concerned about. I would also just note that one of my big hobby horses is, I was talking at length earlier just about how they get reimbursed based on how much all their investments. And it creates and so my hobby horse is, it really creates this perverse incentive for them to not invest in affordable things that are new technologies that would really increase the capacity of the grid but cost no money. And they have no incentive to do it, because if it doesn't cost any money, then rates will go down and their profits will go down. And so there's a lot of these things called grid enhancing technologies. That's the acronym is GET, if anyone's excited to Google about it, and reconductoring. There's a lot of research out there about how effective these technologies are and how much investor-owned utilities in the United States hate introducing them and are so behind the curve, because in the US, we have this really perverse model where utilities generally are incentivized, or they get paid based off of sort of how much money they invest and not how much they save ratepayers. It's very frustrating. And it's a long answer that only partially addressed your question, but I hope it was okay.
Yeah, and it's like with this whole rate case, like it's like the buckets are just so narrow, and like it's not like Central Hudson. I was surprised that like we didn't go into this and then get like a whole roadmap from the company, like describing every expenditure and like why they would need to make, these increases and stuff, like in really clear ways. Like there's nothing like that. Because if they really did go in depth, they would go into like those GET type things and show that they actually don't need to be increasing rates at all. Yeah.
And I think that's like a euphemism for a defensive moat that makes their stock appealing to investors is exactly that. It's convoluted. No one can understand it. The regulators are confused. that's a defensive moat, and they intentionally put that on their investor relations website.
Yeah.
All right,
I
anything
would know
else?
one thing that I would just
ahead.
know one thing that I was pleasantly surprised by is just how forensically the Department of Public Service is going through everything that they've proposed. So like the framework is not my favorite because it's like they propose, then we all respond, and so we're really stuck in their framework. But I will say that the parties to the rate case, and especially the Department of Public Service, I think does a great job of like forensically going through line by line, which I don't think anyone would expect. I think people are like, these increases are just getting approved and no one's like checking the math. I've been surprised that there's a lot of legalistic checking. It's just that maybe the questions we're asking are not the ones I wish we were asking. But I do think the department is working hard at doing the thing that the sort of statute says they have to do.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. I'm glad you feel encouraged that they're doing the right work under difficult circumstances.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. All right, so let's hear from our friends from the Affordable Housing Board. Adele and Terry, want to tell us whether you had suggestions, feedback regarding our proposed amendment to the Affordable Housing Board law as it currently exists.
Adele, do you care to start, or do you want me to
Doesn't matter.
see where I'm going? Well, in order to save your valuable time, I did make some notes because I do tend to stray. Anyway, thank you for inviting us back to talk about the ordinance. If I may, let me go back to how I think we ended up here. The Affordable Housing Board has been working with the current ordinance now for about 9 years. All the board members are new, but the ordinance is not. And in our opinion, it did need some updating in its current form. To us, and Adele, please jump in, but to us, we felt the most pressing requirement was to do something, do anything we could to try and expand the number of affordable units. We just had a conversation about some of the largest corporations in America, and we're here now today with 7 affordable units of housing. So now we're back to the local level. Now we're back at ground zero. So we would like, we've proposed to you, and I think that we probably have agreement on this, that we would go from 10% of units to 15% of units for projects that are in excess of 21 units. So we would at least do that. We were concerned about not having priority. I'm looking at Mr. Murray for the volunteer firemen and firefighters. We think they should have priority points, the same as the rescue squad. And then there was a fine-tuned little piece about a 120-day grace period for new applicants. Not to get into the weeds, but it would make it easier for the applicants and for the developers if we could do that. The current draft, I think, that the public has seen and that you all are working with, does have a graduated scale of income limits to try and address people who are below the 60% AMI level. Now, Adele spoke about this, and I'm not going to speak for her, but she did speak to this as part of the committee. And I also spoke to a local developer about this. They've impressed on me that if we do that, if we bring down the income levels of the families without addressing the maximum rents, we're going to leave those people out. Even though their income is low, the rent's going to be too high, they're not going to be able to afford it. The local developer has told me, and I agree with him at this point, I'll be honest with you, he convinced me of this, that if we do that, it's going to put such a strain on development because the rents would have to be so low for people of that income to afford it. We would probably see less development. They just couldn't afford it without some kind of other outside assistance, be it tax considerations, something from the state, something from the federal government. And we all know that's not happening anytime soon. So with that in mind, my proposal, and Adele, you speak up when I'm done. My proposal is to focus on the 15%, include the firefighters, the 120-day grace period, and move on from there. I appreciate what you're trying to do. I really do. And I don't want anybody to be embarrassed or blindsided by this. I tried to share some of my thoughts, at least with the mayor, so he knew what I was going to say. I think you've made a valiant effort to do something for people of the low income. But if we do that locally, remember, we're talking about the village of New Paltz now. We're not talking about Black Rock. We're not talking about large utility companies. It's just us. We don't have the resources to address those lower rents that are going to help those lower income people. So with that in mind, I appreciate you having me. I'm willing to work with you in the future. I'll turn it over to Adele.
So I kind of agree with a lot of what Terry says, but the 40% is an issue because how many applications do we have? 60?
And 100 families at least on the list right now.
7 units. And from what I understand, when families come up and there's an availability, they can't afford the $1,400 for a 2-bedroom apartment. So lowering it to 40% doesn't do any good because they're still paying $1,400 for a 2-bedroom apartment. The only thing is if you, I don't know, I'm just thinking of it now, if those units that you're proposing the 40% for get a requirement of a lower rent, only those units, not the ones that are still at 60 and 80%. Following what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe that's a possibility.
But would you run into the same issue that you were bringing up in terms of would that potentially depress developers' interest?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're saying, well, where is your example here? For prospective tenants of rental housing developments with 21 or more units, where at least 15% have been set aside for affordable housing, the family income for at least 1/2 of those units must be at or below 40%. So we're not suggesting that it happened to all of them, but just to some of them. Not we are suggesting, I'm just suggesting. So yeah, I think it's doable because you're also offering somewhere in here, I read, you maybe not in your proposal, but in the, in the big code, that they get additional units at market rent. They were able to build additional units at market rent.
But I feel like that was an opportunity before we changed a lot of the zoning districts because we don't penalize for density anymore. Like since we wrote NVR and changed.
But not in all the districts, not in R3.
Not in R3 for sure. R3 continues
I know
to,
this.
yes, yeah.
But
But
anyway,
B2, NVR, Gateway, that density penalty no longer exists. So then that carrot no longer exists either.
in those zones.
And that's most likely where you would see the larger apartment complexes. And that is where we're seeing, because those are the ones that are mixed use buildings.
I'm sorry that those 2 big projects went through without having this in place, because that was a huge opportunity to get the extra units. And I was hoping that in the resolution, it would say, the board is considering this, and if this law is passed, then you would have to abide by that, but that didn't happen. So that's an opportunity. And one of the
I think
things-
that was investigated and I don't know that it was as easy as we would have liked. Yeah.
I don't know how many big developments you're gonna have in the village. I mean, you have one going on right now. I don't know how
We're
that's
getting
gonna happen.
we're getting approached pretty regularly.
Oh, yeah, good. I have one other thing personally that I brought up to the board, but it's not clear, and there's something that is extremely unclear to me in this code. And I think if you're changing something, this needs to be cleared up. And that is, when I read this code, there is a piece that describes number of bedrooms to how many people. So let's say if you're 2 people, you can either get a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom. And something like that all the way. If you're, 3 bedrooms can either have from 3 to 6 people, depending. However, in another section of the code, it describes the multiple assigned to the number of bedrooms in the dwelling unit. And the way it reads, I've given it to 3 of my friends to read.
Which section is this affordable
So this
housing
is-
section or some other part of the zone? Okay, affordable housing. Yeah.
2.5 and 132.3 is, gives you the table. The way I read it, and my friends, is that it's not about the number of, like, 2 people will be paid, the way this reads, 2 people will be paying the same amount of rent for a 1-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment. That's the way this reads to me. I don't think that's what you mean. I don't think that's supposed to happen. And I think a lawyer has to look at that and take a look at the wording, because it says of the multiple assigned to the number of bedrooms. Multiple, I'm assuming, means people, and everybody else that I gave it to felt it meant people. So that has to be made more clear.
Well, doesn't it filter down to income?
No,
Well, the way it's operated in the past, first of all, yes, I agree, it is confusing. But the way we actually did it, the last time we had any available units, the maximum rents were based on family size. So the maximum rent for a family of 1, 2, or 3, or whatever, was based on their family size, was based on 100% of the area median income times 2%. And that's a little bit too much into the weeds, but let's leave it at this. The rent was based on family size. The developer came up with maximum rents by bedrooms that correlated to family size. In other words, a 2-person family could go into a 1-bedroom apartment and the maximum rent would be the 1-bedroom apartment maximum rent. A 3-person family could go into a 2-bedroom apartment, but their maximum rent was the maximum rent for a 2-bedroom apartment.
but it doesn't read that way.
But that's how we did it.
It doesn't read that way in the law. So anyway, for me, it's just really confusing.
Okay.
So I think so a landlord or a developer can read it however they want. The other thing I'd love to see changed is that if there is added rent for, let's say, an amenity in a building that is required by all of the tenants, then the affordable apartments should get those amenities for free. Because
Not for free, but as part of it.
as part of their rent, which is, so we have one big building that has several affordable units, that there are certain amenities that are part of their rent, and the affordable housing units, people don't get those amenities. They will
Right,
have
so,
to
but
pay
you're talking
extra.
about something that's, in that example, it's a relatively nominal cost, whereas I think one model that should be investigated more would be like a shared car. So
It's enough, yes, well.
that would be,
when you say number,
that would be,
who's to?
well, I'm comparing the value of a shared car versus the value of having access to a gym. Right, so you're saying any amenity should be free?
I'm saying.
I think there should.
Required by the other tenants.
Right, but
They're
if,
required and they're part of their rent. I'm not saying any tenant that wants to pay an extra $50, they can use the gym. That's different. But part of your rent is that you can use the gym and, let's say, the rooftop deck. But these affordable tenants, they have to pay an extra $50, $100, or whatever it is. And it really, I think it's degrading to those tenants. And so what I was suggesting is that.
but do
it's
you understand the
rent.
example that I was bringing up, though? So if you have an amenity that's like, would be cost prohibitive to offer for free, that I don't think that's the solution. I don't think you say that the solution is any amenity is free.
Saying that any amenity that is allowed, that is part of the rent of the rest of the tenants, of all of the full paying tenants. That's what I'm saying. I don't care what it is. If it's added rent, it's added rent. So all I'm saying is that added rent.
I think there has to be some sort of boundary. It wouldn't make sense, like,
I don't know. Okay. So
I think
mean,
the point you're making.
But we did not, and it just seems petty, in my opinion. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Did I hear that Deacon Bill had signed in?
Yes, I'm signed in and I'm listening.
Awesome.
Hi, Bill, how are you?
I'm good.
Do you have anything to add?
You know, this is an area that I find particularly perplexing. And I think that you two guys are doing a great job of presenting it. And I don't think there's anything that I can say that is going to add to that. I do agree with Adele about the fee, because in that situation, the fee is included in the rent, except for the units that are, quote, affordable. And unless those affordable folks pay an extra amount of money, they don't get the same benefit of living there as the other folks.
I feel like my example is being lost. Like, it's very different when it's easy to say, yes, include a access to gym, right? Because that's like, if you had access to a car, which has a very different value, and you're then requiring the affordable unit to get free access to a car, I don't think that, I think that kind of flies in the face of what you're suggesting.
If I could add, that it was interesting hearing this discussion when the law was being drafted originally, in terms of appliances and stuff. And I know the original intent was to make sure everybody has the same appliances. And I remember that came up with cost of refrigerator too, why should everybody have the same appliances within each of the units? And it's well, because otherwise it would be inequitable. So I feel like this has come up with that particular building you're thinking of, and I agree, Adele, it's degrading because it's something that makes those units different than the rest.
I would almost rather see a lesser stove then.
Yeah,
have,
because
like,
that's
the
at
whole
least
building know that these people
inside.
Can't use the gym.
That's exactly it. Like a stove, at least not everybody would see, but otherwise it's kind of like putting a label on their front door, saying,
Right.
yeah, like this is how much these people
Anyway.
make.
I said, maybe you can't legislate that.
The unit should be indistinguishable, and I thought that is how the law was written, but when we
It
looked
is.
closer, it's
Yeah.
not exactly written that
I mean,
way.
if you can't do it, you can't do it. I just thought it's worth the discussion because.
I think your example of a gym is simple. I was just trying to say that
Yeah.
if you're talking about another amenity that has a very different value, that would be, I think, very
I
odd
always
to
think the word
require
amenities.
it.
Because it's a requirement. So amenities are not usually requirements, right? It's part of their rent, it's added rent, or whatever they call it. Like, you know, I don't know if that the word amenity is the right word. They're calling it amenity, I don't know. So anyway, maybe it's just worth maybe even a discussion. I don't know how many more of these units will be built with pools that the poor people can't use, or, you know, things like that. Unless there's a separate fee for it, for everyone, that's different. But if it's included in the rent, then it should be available. I'm probably making a bigger deal than I should. This other stuff is more important. Right?
Well, I think
know-
this
I
came
know-
up quite a bit, honestly, like, you know, people definitely, it was a complaint I've dealt with, you know, directly, so I think it matters. You know, and maybe, yeah, it definitely should be looked at because it's come up and now you guys have brought it up too, so I know it's not just me.
No, it's not. No,
Yeah.
You're right. And we've had conversations with the management company of the building. And they just respectfully declined, you know.
Like anything that's required in the rent, you know, that's the rent and that's the same thing as, you know, to me, like the unit, you know, and.
I'm
Like
trying to
getting-
anticipate a different paradigm though, like
No,
a typical amenity, like access to a pool or a gym, like that's a conventional concept when you rent an apartment. But I think it would be really cool if actually building developers started including things like cars, right? Because then it would actually make things affordable for everyone. You know, we all, you know, like the idea of zip cars.
Is gonna really start raising the rent.
Right, but then there would be a net savings because then you're not paying for a car yourself. I mean, think of how much your car insurance costs. Think of how much cars cost tens of thousands of dollars. That's the idea.
Yeah. I don't have anything else.
Respectfully, we have a hard enough time getting any apartments built, let alone having apartments with cars built. So
I was just backing up
I
against the
understand,
idea
I
of
understand.
like,
I
all
just-
amenities should be free. I think
Yeah, I think.
we're not
I
anticipating.
think she misspoke. I don't think that's really what she meant. No, I don't think amenities should be free. Well, they're not free.
Yeah. there's-
Somebody's gonna pay. For it. Either the developer's gonna pay for them or the tenant's. Gonna pay. That's the way it should be. Yeah. In any event, I think we've spoken our piece.
Yeah, I think when it relates to like, you don't want to have things like a port door, you don't want to have things like where it's distinguishable in terms of fixtures and appliances, like that should all be the same. There shouldn't be a distinction between like who can use an amenity, like, because honestly, is there really an expense by someone using that? It should be fairly minimal. I'm talking about an amenity that actually does cost
I know
a significant amount of money.
there's only a few tenants in this particular place for, probably maybe one would use the gym, or maybe one would use the rooftop. I mean, not everybody, I mean, I drive by there all the time, I never see anyone in the gym.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, that seems like an easier lift. I just want to kind of anticipate.
So I don't know if that's something you can do, but I have, this is, I had sent this to you once, I saw the correction that I thought was wrong with the thing. I don't know if you knew what I was saying, but I have it if you want to give it to an attorney to look at for the wording that I think is incorrect.
Okay,
So like 132, 3F, that,
132. 5.
Oh.
And the table is on 132. 2, 3.
Yeah, we'll look at that and
Okay.
try to tighten it up.
And as Terry said, we can't address most of the applicants because most of the applicants cannot afford the affordable rent. And so this is affordable housing board, it's only mid-income. And maybe there needs to be another board for low income, you know. I mean, someone making $20,000 a year cannot pay $1,400 a year in rent.
And frankly, the village of New Paltz can't solve that problem. And I respect,
And
there's no way you can do it.
that's why homes and community renewal, like, and developers are applying for grant assistance through those
Right.
programs that are funded by the federal government. You know, that's how it's more likely to get addressed.
Yeah, when I first came on the board a few years ago, you know, I did try and look into the history of the ordinance, just to see what the background of it was. And there was one of the former members of the trustees pointed out that this ordinance was never written to address the low-income individual, low-income family. It was trying to address that lower income.
Right.
And to that, it worked. It does work.
Yes.
You know, it does work. The problem is there's so many people with low incomes that come to us seeking assistance. And I must say, let me give some credit to the staff here at City Hall, and specifically to Nicole. You know, the people come and they apply, and Nicole looks at the application and she tells them, you know, there's no vacancies at all. Number 2, your income is so low, you're going to have a hard time affording these rents. And she refers them to RUPCO. She refers them to you know, to other places. And I admire her and I thank her for doing that. But at least let's try and get something done.
Yeah,
Let's
we're
at
trying,
least
right,
get
right.
something.
And I
I
think
know
that,
you are.
no, but I think the point that you're emphasizing is a good one, in that, like, local government can only go so far. Like, social service programs historically are handled by the state and the county. It's much harder, and, you know, we don't have the tools to offer programming like a county can.
No.
Possibly a discussion for another time is when you look at the point system, right? There's that point system. If you live in New Paltz, you get this many points. If you're a fireman or whatever, you get this many points. We have a lot of applications from far away, right? From other counties.
Yeah, we're getting farther. Yeah.
People are keep putting in applications from, you know, Poughkeepsie and Newburgh, and I mean, do we care about that? Are we looking to house mostly our people here that can't afford it? It's just a question. I found it interesting when I looked at it for the first time, that point system, because people are.
So you're thinking maybe it could make sense, like existing residents would get a point.
Well, that works now. That part works. I mean, if you are, you know, if you're a current resident, you know, you get points.
So that is in there.
Yeah, that's it.
You get an extra point or 2.
That's there. And I wonder, this is just a question because I am not nearly versed in this thing, but I don't know, given what we're trying to do here, which is provide affordable housing. I think some of that falls under the purview of the Fair Housing Act. And I don't know that we could limit it to just residents of Ulster County. I don't
Right.
know if you can do that. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
you might
Tend to think you can't. I don't think that's legal.
be discriminatory otherwise.
Yes.
I
Or
think
at
that's
least,
the
it may
locality.
not be discrimination, but it might be against the Fair Housing Act. Some of the Fair Housing Act is separate from discriminatory practices.
Okay.
Okay.
Not that I'm a lawyer, not that I'm an expert.
Mhm.
But once again, thank you very much
Thank
for having
you.
me. Bill, if you're still here, thank you.
I move that we accept the consent agenda,
Hi.
but I don't think we did that earlier, right? We approved the amendments, but we didn't move the
Oh,
consent
right,
agenda.
yeah.
I'm announcing that we're having a greenhouse gas initiative kickoff meeting on Wednesday, the 8th in this room at 7 p.m.
There.
I move that we authorize the mayor to sign the award acceptance form for an EFC engineering planning grant to study solutions to harden the wastewater treatment plant. The award is for $50,000.
Second,
All in favor?
I,
Was providing an update regarding the ball court project at Hasbrook. So we mentioned this earlier when we were talking to our county legislator about the assistance we received from a grant process that where the county offered municipalities. We applied for $100,000 to be used to update the ball courts. That would include 2 pickleball courts and 1 basketball court, new fence, new concrete steps up to Hasbrook Park, improved walkway. So we're very excited about that. Our staff are going to do a lot of the site prep and install the drainage pipes. We're actually going to have a meeting reviewing some of that with our engineer this morning, but in the rain, we postponed it until Friday. So I'm just sharing that project's moving ahead. You know, we're estimating that project could cost about $250,000. So some of it will be paid for with in-kind maintenance or in-kind assistance from our public works. And some of it will have to be paid out of our rec fee fund.
Is that the western courts?
The ones in front of St. Joseph's
Yeah,
Church.
yeah.
Yeah, Western Hasbrook Park. Yep, yep. And then another update regarding, any questions on the ball courts? Any other questions? Seems like we actually could break, like, part of it is like the timing where some of the trees on the embankment have to be removed because they will damage the fence when it's removed. So it's like, there's like an order of operation that we're trying to be really careful with in terms of using third-party contractors, using our staff, and then building things in the right order. But that's a project that I believe we will actually get done this summer at the latest. And the sidewalk project. So we have a sidewalk project that includes new sidewalks down on Huguenot Street, some of Church, both north and south of Henry W., and a section of Prospect that is north of Slate Street. So that's one sidewalk project. We're waiting for some review from the New York State DOT where that can proceed. And then we have another sidewalk project that we're looking to pay for with CHIPS money, and that is for Prospect Street from north of Main Street down to Slate Street, and that's on the western side of Prospect. And we were really hoping to have bid docs for both of those projects available. It doesn't look like the timing will work because we're still waiting for the DOT review to be completed. Although we did get an email, and I saw some emails going back and forth with our engineers and the DOT today. But the reason that we have to do the southern portion of Prospect Street ASAP is because we have a sewer project on Prospect Street that has to be done. And we must do the sidewalk project before we do the sewer work. So I was hoping that we would already have the bid docs available. We've been waiting for the DOT. I think we're just going to push forward whether or not that DOT review of the other sidewalks is ready or not. And we're just going to proceed with the Prospect project because we have to do that before we have the contractor who we've already signed a contract with to do the work. You know, because often people wonder, like, how come you did this then and you didn't do that? And it's like, believe me, not easy to align everything and time it perfectly. And then the next item is, I move that we authorize the mayor to submit a letter of intent to apply to New York Restore Round 8 for the Ann Oliver House. We applied in round 7 and we did not receive an award, so we're going to recycle our application and resubmit for round 8, and hopefully we'll be luckier this time. Alex seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
And the next item has to do with a revocable license agreement between the Village of New Paltz and Legacy Dispensary. So Legacy Dispensary is a licensed cannabis company in New York State. They were actually the licensee that allowed us to host the grower showcases. So we have experience working with that team, and what we are looking to do is to create a bridge in between now and when the first dispensary opens in the Village of New Paltz. My fingers are crossed that that will happen within the next several weeks. I mean, this is the feedback that I'm getting from New York State officials, that the former Stewart shop should open in the not too distant future, but this would basically be a opportunity for individuals in our community to buy regulated, tested cannabis, where New York State receives the tax revenue as opposed to what happens in the illicit market. Many people in our community keep asking us about when a dispensary will open up, or how come the showcase did not continue after the end of the year. So this is an opportunity to use a licensed dispensary to provide an opportunity for individuals to use that dispensary's kiosk in our fire station garage. We would actually mirror the same hours of operation, but we would also include Sunday afternoons. So it would feel like the showcase, although this would not be a showcase. And I've discussed this concept with our county comptroller, Marge Gallagher, our village attorney, Will Frank, our chief of police, Robert Lucchese, and so I've tried to make sure that different folks are aware of what we're trying to do, and this would be different in that our local government would not participate in the sales tax generation, but the reason that we would do it, in addition to making sure that this legal product is available to our area residents, is that we would also be receiving a $200 fee per 1 week period, as well as sharing 3% of the pre-tax sales as a contribution to the village in exchange for allowing the dispensary to use the garage space.
I am so happy about this idea because, people will say to me, like, they Googled where they can find cannabis now that, the showcase is, no more, and we're waiting on that dispensary and stuff. And like, long story short, people don't tend to go immediately to the OCM website to like look up, find my local dispensary. And then Legacy Dispensary does deliver here, but only on Sundays and for a certain amount and stuff, blah, 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 blah. I think we did a really good job of the Cannabis Grower Showcase, like curbing the black market, illicit market, and this would be a really good way to continue to do that. And also like kind of getting people, like one thing people loved about the showcase is like getting to know like cannabis and like getting to actually ask questions and kind of like, being comfortable with it. So I'm excited to continue that. I'm like glad a way to make that work has been figured out. Yeah.
So when somebody walks into this, it's not going to look any different really than our showcases.
No, it would be different. So we would only, they would only be purchasing through Legacy Dispensary as opposed to purchasing things directly from the farmers. That's how the
Right.
showcases will work. And also the way this would work too is that an individual would have to enter their order into a kiosk,
Got it.
basically using their delivery website, and then they could receive their delivered items in real time at the location. So it's a way to make sure that legal tested products are available.
And the
And
deliveries available as well during those hours?
I don't, speaking with the president of their company, I believe their plan is they're not gonna run like a delivery business out of our
I see.
garage. They're gonna run a business where they provide individuals with the opportunity to use the kiosk and then receive stuff via the delivery license.
Wondering if somebody outside can, say somebody lives in Middletown, and can they make their order and pick up an impulse?
Yes,
Great, great.
Right.
Yeah, and also technically with the showcase, even though it felt like you were purchasing directly from a farmer, it was all through Legacy. You know, that was how this was done.
100%.
Yeah.
Right, because no farm could collect money. The
Yeah,
only way, a
Licensed.
licensed operator could collect money. I think another interesting distinction too is that you could pay for items with cash at the showcase.
yeah.
In this iteration, you would only be able to pay for items with a credit card or a debit card, no cash.
Wow.
Which I think is actually good, because one of the things that always had me nervous was the idea of like, we don't want anyone thinking that there's an opportunity because there's a bunch of cash here. There will not be cash.
Much better.
And I would also share, and I spoke with the women-owned business up in Kingston. They're in the Kingston Plaza. It's called Catskill Mountain High, and they're trying to secure a dispensary license for their retail location. They are also partnering with Legacy Dispensaries, and they've been doing it for the last several weeks using this exact same structure where he is there for a set number of hours. I say he, I mean Matt and his staff. And then that is a way for people to legally purchase cannabis products in Kingston. So I spoke with the owner of that business, and I said, you know, we should really be making sure that we're, you know, comparing notes and kind of like making it clear that, you know, we're, you know, looking at this as an opportunity to collaborate. And I did the same thing with the entity that is most likely going to take the space at the former Stewart shop. Legacy has worked with them in the past, and yeah, I made sure that, you know, it may make sense to include them in this location. I mean, that is to be determined, but you know, I think it's the more collaboration, the more working together of all these parties, especially because so much of this is new frontier, the better it will be for all involved.
So I just had one question. I did a little wordsmithing. I don't know if you caught the back and forth. It's been updated. Is how did the maximum license fee be arrived at $2,200?
So I backed into that number based on how much was sold during the 1 week periods when we had the showcase.
Right.
So, you know, that's something that Matt asked for as far as just like a cap. So, you know, the idea is that we would be making, you know, a material amount of money as a local government, and you know, it just seems to make
Is that
sense.
on par with tax revenue?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, I move that we go ahead and sign on to this revocable license agreement.
Second.
All in favor? And then the next item is the park use application for the Pride Parade and Festival. There was a correct request to delay the refundable deposit. That's currently set at $500.
We had $0 last week. Now we have a bunch of money that we'll be getting, the Pride Coalition from a great event
Yeah.
on Sunday. And we're gonna have, the Hudson Valley Center, in Kingston has a certificate of insurance they'll be able to take on. And we're looking to collaborate now with Big Gay Hudson Valley as well. So we'll be able to make it work. We just had no money.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think the refundable deposit is a great way of doing this. And it's cool that you won't even need it because A, you have a certificate, and B, you have money. But I always think of when Bernie Sanders was here, we made sure that there was a refundable deposit paid in case the park was super messy. And then I called, after the event, I spoke with our public works guys and I'm like, can we give back any of this refundable deposit? He's like, yeah, give it all back. The park looks great. So everyone who was there for the Bernie Sanders event, there was no issue with like having to clean up because people kind of looked out for themselves and didn't make a mess.
Yeah, so I think the different coalition partners need to figure out like who can do the deposit versus once we see what permit amount will be too. So we can do it collaboratively and split and whatnot was kind of the other thing, because it's like if one org shells out basically 50% of their coffers for the deposit, and then is it going to be on all the other orgs to pay for the police and whatnot? So we wanted to like kind of get the process moving and try to get a dollar amount so we can like be equitable in splitting that kind of upfront.
That's what the police said to me, is that the fact that you guys are working on this early this year will actually make it more affordable than rushing to do it, too late in the season.
Yeah.
Because it really helps the police with their planning. So that's
Good.
great that's happening
Good.
early in the season. It just makes more sense.
So it's June 1st.
Yeah, Saturday, June 1st.
It's the 55th anniversary of Stonewall this year.
Mhm.
Yeah, bring your own brick. No, that's why they're making us do the deposit, right? That's why we're making us do the deposit. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's a big year. It's gonna be the 20th anniversary of this event. And I think I have a sense that, there's a big feeling of, excitement around this year in particular. Already different groups have been reaching out that haven't really been taking leadership roles in the past. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna jump to item number 11. So we have
So we have to
what?
vote to delay the deposit.
Yeah, we didn't really.
Oh, do we have to take an action? Request to delay. Oh, we're delaying it until, what date do you recommend?
Before.
No, it can't be a week before.
Probably like May.
Mhm.
I think we can figure this out, but we'll have responses on the permit
All right, make the
before
motion.
then,
then.
right?
Make the motion.
How about delay, I move to approve the park use app for Hudson Valley Pride March and Festival until the total amount permit costs are determined, which will be in advance of the event for sure.
But is a date important? I didn't,
Yeah, I think we need to put a date.
Okay.
can we say May 15th? Okay,
Until May 15th.
all in favor?
Aye.
I'm seconding it and I'm calling the question.
Okay,
Uh,
aye. Thank
Okay,
you.
next item, we've done this annually, propose that we hire 2 summer season full-time DPW folks, and an all-year part-time parking enforcement person. I think we actually had done that previously. This is just kind of an announcement that we're still looking for a part-time parking enforcement person, but we had not officially announced or voted on whether to do the summer seasonal help. So I'm moving that we go ahead and ask for applicants for the summer season help.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then the next item is we got a bill from the New Paltz Public Access Committee. There's an invoice for putting some meetings on channel 23. 9 meetings were uploaded in between the 29th of, I'm sorry, November 29th of last year through Jan 16th of this year, total of 16 hours of was needed to do that work. So the bill is $480. From what I understand, that's a very reasonable bill for that amount of work. I think we should have a question about whether we want this to continue. My understanding is that the quality was not great. I kind of feel like it doesn't make us look particularly good as a local government to have like really low quality images of our meetings, because if people want to watch our meetings, they are being recorded. They're available on YouTube.
There's no audio either.
There's no audio.
None of it. I was watching the other day. Couldn't hear anything.
Oh, I didn't even hear that before.
Yeah, literally 2 days ago I was watching.
So when you were watching channel 23,
Yes. No audio.
you couldn't hear anything, right?
Oh,
So
God.
from what I understand, there's like some technological challenges. It's harder than one would imagine to simply take the YouTube videos and make them broadcastable on 23. So I'm suggesting that we agree to go ahead and pay this invoice of $480, but also ask the Public Access Committee to hit pause and not continue until we figure out an improved solution
Pause
on having them upload meetings.
Okay.
Upload, take the content from our YouTube channel and put them on the rebroadcast.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was that hefty job to kind of get it from one device to the other, but yeah.
I think that's always been a challenge, is that,
Yeah.
it's more work than many would imagine, just to take the content and put it in a format so that it can be broadcast. So it takes some time, it takes some money. And then I guess the formats are not necessarily jiving in a way that it ends up being watchable. I think it kind of makes this look a little bit unprofessional.
Yeah, people can find the YouTube, and Elton Library has tech help
Yeah.
for anyone who needs help doing
And
that.
I've asked the representative from Spectrum if they could retrieve data to show how many viewers are watching channel 23, so we can get, a better sense. I think that would be an important data point. And then another data point that I put in this agenda is just that our franchise fee revenue is down 36% since 2013. It just goes down a little bit every year with fewer people paying for cable TV. One of the reasons that the primary reason that we received this cable franchise fee is because the cable company uses our right of way for their equipment, and we are compensated. But what's curious is that the Public Service Commission hasn't updated laws that would then also allow us to be recipients of a fee, because these same companies are using our right of ways for their cable internet.
Yeah.
So this is creating a challenge, and I've had this discussion with other mayors and municipal managers at NICOM in terms of this is a revenue source that has existed that's going away and it's not being replaced. And I think, Bill, you brought this up at the last meeting too. It's like we're seeing the contraction, like the year-over-year contraction in terms of franchise fee volume, but it may even be more significant if you actually factored in the cost increase from the cable. Right. So it's not a static number of users.
Costs more, but you get less.
Right. So my motion will be to ask the Public Access Committee to hit pause on uploading meetings to 23 until we have more information. That's a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
I move that we approve the resolution regarding the participation in the New York State Pro Housing Community Program. Someone want to second that? All in favor?
Aye.
I move bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
PB liaison update. We have any?
Sure, a couple of quick things. I don't think I updated you from the last Ulster County Planning Board meeting, which was on 7th of February, because I missed the last meeting last time. But it was good to see there was one referral put before us. I forget what town it was, but they were discussing the ADU. There was an ADU law in their community, and one of the suggestions that was not part of their ADUs can't be used for less than 30 days. Short-term rental usage on ADUs. So that was included in this added to this community. The county's looking for another $65 million to put into ADUs. And that they went through the 125 million.
That was federal money. So did they get more federal money?
That's what they're looking for.
Okay.
65 million. On the local planning board, the meeting last week was, most of the conversation dealt with 11 Water Street. A lot of conversation about where water is going to go. Again, traffic considerations were brought up. The short the short environmental assessment form was discussed, and that went through, and that was okay. So it continues to be discussed and be examined long form to be eventually put forth. But there were also discussions about how the building looks aesthetically. I don't think there was real agreement.
I don't believe we had a CBA meeting since the last time we provided an update. And then I move that we go into executive session regarding pending litigation, and then we'll come back out. So let's just go into the building department and come back. Alex seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.